Have you ever seen a bird way up high? It's small, it's yellow, it's zipping around. Someone said it might be a warbler. You've heard that word, but you don't know what it is. See, these warblers, they're bright, they're colorful, but they're all the same size, but they all have unique facial patterns. They also have unique voices. Their songs are different, but it's hard to tell them apart. I'm going to teach you how to become a warbler master by learning all the common warblers of North America so that you can stop guessing and start knowing.
Hello and welcome to Warblers. Who loves a warbler? Oh man, they are little bright pieces of joy that jump into our lives in spring, during migration, and then they disappear, and then they come back in fall and adorn us again. Depending on where you live, you can see some of the warblers year round. And some you only get briefly, and so if you're not ready for them, they're going to be out of your grasp before you even get to see them. So step one is to know what they are ahead of time, so when you see them briefly in the woods during migration, you can enjoy them. Many folks have the warbler as a spark bird, meaning when they see it, they really jump into birding. So let's get to it. If you were to count every warbler that came into the US and Canada, and even ones that kind of live in Mexico but just jump over the border, or ones that live in Asia and Europe but sometimes jump across the pond, you'd have 59 different warblers. Now, do you know what I mean when I say warbler? Well, it's a very small bird that flies from typically the Caribbean or South America or Mexico, where it lives in the wintertime, and then they breed in the boreal forest up in Canada in the summertime. So because there's that long flight, they tend to cover a lot of North America, and so you get to see them as they're migrating through. And they're very small songbirds, and they're typically very brightly patterned and colored. And because they go from Canada down to Central and South America, they typically fly over the eastern half of Canada and the US. That's why they're called eastern wood warblers in some field guides, because they're usually in the east, but they do go to the west as well. And we'll talk about that today. But if you were to see every one that came into the borders, there'd be 59 to keep track of. And I've put them in alphabetical order here on this chart. That's way too many to keep track of, especially if they're not ones that are going to be in your neighborhood every year or even every 5, 10, or 20 years. So I'm going to help you out by taking the red ones. I've put in red are the ones that are not very common, meaning they really only skirt into the U.S. every once in a while, or they're very locally found, meaning they're only found in, say, the high mountains of Arizona. And so if you don't live there, it's not one that you need to concern yourself about. And if you do live there, you probably already know about it. So once I take away these ones that are in red, well, look, before I do that, this one yellow-browed warbler here, this showed up one day in Toronto about 3 years ago. And it was a day that I was just happened to be driving to Toronto to go to IKEA, and it hit the rare bird alerts. And what's so special about this is it was the first time in Ontario ever. It was a small nondescript warbler from Europe. And somebody found it and said, "What is this bird? I've never seen it before." And some European bird specialist said, "No, that's the yellow-browed warbler." And so I just happened to be there that day, and I jumped over to that neighborhood and saw it with about 100 other birders, and then that was it. It was gone. But so it's made the list, but it's not one that you'll most likely see in your neighborhood. All right. So that limits it down to 41 warblers, which is still a lot. So I'm going to split it up into the ones that are the ones you're most commonly going to run into throughout the year, which is 22. So we're going to work on these 22 warblers today. And there's 13 that are found mostly only in the east, and they're uncommon. And then there's 6 that are found mostly in the west, and they're typically uncommon. So I'm just going to leave those there. And we're going to talk today about these 22 most common warblers. So the way I've put my slides together is I'm going to show you the male and the female version of each warbler, if there's a difference. Sometimes it's just breeding versus non-breeding, or adult versus immature. And then I'm going to show you the map of where these warblers are found. And then we're going to talk about the song, and because sometimes the warblers are hard to see, but they're very vocal. So if we can know the song of each of these birds, it means we'll be able to identify them with not necessarily having to see them. All right. We're doing it in alphabetical order, starting with the American Redstart. So the first warbler doesn't even have warbler in its name, but it's still a warbler. So the American Redstart, I call it the Halloween warbler. It's like a miniature Baltimore Oriole, right? You see that black and orange, but they're tiny, right? So an Oriole is a bird about the size of a robin, where this is 6 inches or so, so half the size, or just a little bit bigger than half the size. Robins are about 11 inches. Black and orange, this is the male, and what you'll notice when you see a redstart is it's got these really bright tail feathers that it loves to flick open. And so if it's flying in front of you, you'll see those flashes, kind of like if you ever see a junco. It's got the flashes of white on its tail. It's very similar to that type of action. And it's actually for a reason. The redstart will flick its wings and its tail to startle the bugs, and because they love eating the insects. So if you can get the insects to freak out by flapping your wings and shaking your tail feathers, now you can eat the bugs. So the males are black and orange, where the females are kind of this dull gray, yellowy green, but it's got that same flash on its tail and on its wings. So if you see that, you know it's a redstart. The sound of the redstart, if you look at this visual of the way their call is, you see it go up, 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 and then down. And so it kind of sounds like it's sneezing. It goes, choo. And so the way I remember that is it's kind of a little kid who's sneezing into his trick-or-treat bag. All right, let me play it for you, see if you can hear it. Choo. All right, see if you can remember that. All right, and looking at the map, they are pretty widespread across the U.S. and Canada. There we go. Next is the Bay-breasted Warbler. Bay describes the reddish-brown color of horses. It's actually a horse term, bay. So that's what it's describing the male here, that brown chestnut. It actually does look kind of like the color of a horse there. And the female is same 2 wing bars, but doesn't have that brown on the cap, on the throat, and on the chest. The Bay-breasted Warbler actually goes through quite a costume change from spring migration. This is the spring here, the male and the female, to fall. In fall, the brown goes away, kind of the dull goes away, and it takes on this yellowy green wash with the 2 bright wing bars. When you see them, they're typically in the mid canopy, so not at the very top of the tree, not on the ground, but mid-height. And they feed on the spruce budworm, which is a caterpillar that turns into a moth. And it's very destructive to fir trees up north. And these outbreaks, you can see here's a picture of one where you can see these larvae, these caterpillars are just destroying this forest. This outbreak can last up to 10 years. And what that means is there's a lot of food for birds. And so the birds go and feast on these worms or these caterpillars, and really impacts the population of the birds, right? The trees suffer, but the birds really have great offspring and great numbers because there's just food in abundance. So they're a spruce budworm, which means they travel around looking for the budworm. They won't come back to the same forest each year. If the caterpillars and the moths have moved on, it'll go hunt that out and breed there. They have a very high-pitched one-note. You can see here on the spectrogram. Let me play it for you. Here we are. Zeet, 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 zeet. Zeet, 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 zeet. So it's one note, same pitch, 5 or 6 times. All right, and you can see by the map, it's really straight down the continent there, and it's found on the east side. Pretty widespread on the east. Just to remind you how to read these maps, the orange section is where they're breeding, and the yellow is where they're migrating through. Next is, I think, my favorite warbler. It's called, aptly, the black and white. And why do I like it? Because it walks upside down. It's much like a nuthatch will do. It will walk all around a tree and their limbs upside down, right side up, and it's probing for insects. It's very easy to spot because of its bold patterns. Looks like a zebra, but acts like a nuthatch. And it's a little hard to tell in these photos, but you can tell male from female by how dark black the stripes are. Very dark is the male, and the female's just a tad lighter than the black. It's almost a dark gray. So that's how you tell on the female. And then also see this patch here on the face. The black mark on the face is much more pronounced on the male. Here it's not that pronounced. It's almost like a big triangle here you can see on the males, where the female, it's almost just like a little face mask there. All right, the sound that they make sounds like a squeaky bike wheel that needs to be lubed up. I'll play that for you here. And while I get that ready, you can see the map. It's probably 3/4 of the continent has the black and white warbler, and they further down than just in Canada there. So they migrate from Florida and Mexico and the Caribbean up to and through the US and Canada. Let me play that sound. You see that up and down, up and down, up and down. Yeah, you can almost hear it, the bicycle wheel going around and around, and the squeaks either at the top or at the bottom of its wheel. There you are. All right, next we have the black-throated blue warbler. And here's one that's such a striking difference between the male and the female. And also you can tell that it's the male that this bird is named after. Black-throated blue. So you can see the big black throat on a blue warbler. Now the female doesn't have black throat and just has the faintest hint of blue on the upper wings right here. For the longest time, they thought these were 2 different species of birds before they could do the DNA and all the science stuff we do now. But they do share a little bit of blue, but the field mark when you're looking on a female is this white little triangle on that wing. All right, look for that little wing block, they call it. You can see that that's the same on the male as on the female. All right, so looking for that, and you can see it pretty much at every angle here. The males are so striking though, you'll when you see it, you'll say, ah, that's the black-throated blue. And birders will, they'll call it the nickname of just black-throated blue. They won't say warbler at the end. It's just a black-throated blue, or the next one's a black-throated green. But that's what they're talking about here. They're found in the lower canopy, so a little further, closer down to the ground, or if there's a really shrubby understory area of the woods. Okay. And when you're underneath looking up, sometimes all you see is that white belly on the males. So not many of the warblers have an all-white belly, so you can say, aha, that's a black-throated blue. But on a bird this beautiful, you hope you get a good look at it. All right. They are found on the eastern half of the U.S. and in Canada, and they breed up in the boreal forest or, along the Appalachian Mountains here. And their sound they make is the please, please, please squeeze. And you can see that here visually. Please, please, please squeeze. Let's play that for you. Take a listen. Please, please, please squeeze. All right, that is the black-throated blue. One more thing on them is, what's nice is they don't change colors in the fall. So it's one of the few warblers that keeps its bright colors. So if you see that in the fall, you won't be disappointed with the black-throated blue male. Next is very similarly named, but way different looking, is the black-throated green warbler. All right, so it, like its name mentioned, has a black throat here on the male and little less pronounced there on the female, but you can see a little bit. And then greenish yellow on the head down the back on the male, and then on the head, but not as far back on the female. Now, this one sings like crazy. They're constantly singing, but they're tough to see because they love being way up high at the top of the canopy. You'll hear a term called warbler neck, which is the meaning of the sore neck you get from constantly looking with your binoculars straight up, trying to decipher these high canopy birds. And the biggest culprit is the black-throated green because they love being so high. You'll hear it, but can you see it? What you will see are those bright yellow cheeks and the black throat. So because it's kind of a kind of paley white underneath, what really stands out are those bright yellow cheeks there on the black-throated green. It's found on the east half of the U.S. and Canada, and it breeds there, looks like, along the Appalachians and Ontario, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and up. They love being on the top of the trees, so their song is the same. They sing trees, 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 I love trees, or Z, 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 zo, Z. Let me play that for you. Trees, 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 I love trees. Z, 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 zo, Z. All right, there we go. Black-throated green. Now here's, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful, the Blackburnian. Not many birds have this fiery orange belly around its chin. So if you see that in the woods, man, and the pictures don't do it justice. You got to see it in person and you'll just be floored with how beautiful this bird is. So it's unmistakable flame orange face and throat on the male, and the female, sorry girl, just pretty dull, but has these two wing bars and a little face triangle there. Like the black-throated green, they love being high up in the canopy, and they are similar areas, right? Eastern half of the U.S. and Canada, but very widespread during migration, and then breeding there along the Appalachians and southern Canada and northern U.S. Z, 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 zo, Z, they go zip, 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 dee, 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 dee. So it's a 3-part song. But what I like to call it is, because you can see that the sounds go higher as it goes longer. It goes burn, 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 burn me up. So it's like the flame orange throat. It's burning up. Burn, 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 burn me up. Let's hear that. All right, take a listen. You can hear it going up at the end. Yeah. It's a 3-part song. Burn, 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 burn me up. All right. Another thing about the Blackburnian is the name is kind of strange. It's just named after a naturalist named Blackburn. So that's where the name came from. And the other thing you might see is when they're very territorial. So when they're setting up their territory, they will fly. If two males are fighting over territory, they'll fly and do acrobatics and fly around each other, almost like they're fighting. And they'll do like this nose bomb, dive bomb down to the ground and flutter their wings. It's quite remarkable seeing them do that. All right, the Blackburnian Warbler. I hope you get to see that this year.
All right, that was a good start, a good warbler introduction. But stay tuned for part 2 because things are about to get a little wobbly.